So I'm going to talk you through a tutorial on how to create this kind of effect in Photoshop. We've been looking at this artist, Sven Pfrommer, and he creates this kind of layered, urban sort of looking outcome. So we're going to try to create that now in Photoshop. So if I head over to Photoshop here, you can see I've already got some images here that I'm going to try to mix together now into an outcome. So this is going to be my background layer. So the very first thing I've done is I have duplicated the background here. Sorry, I should have taken that away and shown you how to do that. So if you don't know how to do that, you just need to right click on the layer and click duplicate. So you can see that's my original background layer with a padlock on it, and this is the active layer that I'm working on. The reason I do that is so that if anything goes wrong and the upper layers don't turn out how I want them to, I can just delete them, and then I can go back to my original image here that will be unaltered underneath it all. So that's the very first step that I do. Now, looking at his outcomes, yes, he's got all this sort of orange and yellow and red coming across it, but actually looking at the buildings themselves, I think he may have turned them black and white, or at least some kind of like monotone grey anyway. So we're going to have a little go at doing that on Photoshop. Now there's a number of ways that you can turn something black and white. The one that gives you the most control is if you go into Image and Adjustments and select black and white. You can see it's already turned black and white behind, which is the default one. You can, of course, select some presets from here, which will give you some different outcomes of all sorts. So like, for example, there's like an infrared one here. It's allowing different tones to be more dominant than others and so on. But we're going to stick with, I'll stick with the default for now. And what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to adjust these slider bars here. So you can see that there's some channels here with different colours on. So we've got red, yellow, green, cyan, blue and magenta. And basically by sliding these up and down individually, it will allow me to like get some different effects that I want, depending on what colours are dominant, which ones are present and which ones aren't and so on. So sorry, I just did those really randomly then. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the sky quite light because I don't want that sort of like being any sort of like focal point. So I'm going to take the blues out to keep the sky quite washed out almost. I'm going to try to adjust some of the, maybe some of the shadows a little bit, just to lift it a little bit so we can see some more of the details in the shadows. Let's see what happens with the yellow. I think it's going a little bit too bright now. I think I'm going to have it about there. So it's looking quite high contrast. We've got some, there's not too many sort of mid greys. We've got a lot of white and we've got some really, really dark ones and just a few greys in the middle. So I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to press OK. Now, what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to use a filter on this to make it look a bit more sort of stencily. If I look back at his original images, the images themselves that he's used are quite blocky. They do look almost very stencily. So over in Photoshop, I'm going to come up to Filter, and I'm going to apply, I think it's an artistic cutout, that's what I want. So Filter, Artistic and Cutout, and then it should open like this, where it will kind of show you a preview of what the image will look like with that filter on it. With a bit of luck. Let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. So you can see, if I zoom in slightly, like you can see what's happened to the image itself. It's sort of joining pixels together that are similar in tone and giving it this sort of very stencil kind of effect. So I'm going to press OK on that. I'm happy with that. And now let's have a little look back at some of his images. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to start to layer some more details on top here. So let's go to this one. What I would like to do now is I would like to take this, the pedestrian sign, the lamppost, and I want to place it over the top of what I've been working on. So I'm going to try the quick selection tool, and hopefully that will give me enough of a neat outcome. So I'm just going to work my way along. So I'm just keeping my finger pressed down on the mouse and just working over the areas I want it to select. The way the pixels become very similar in tone or colour, may start to seep out into the background. Oh, no, it hasn't on this one, so I'm going to stick with the quick selection tool. I will show you another selection tool shortly. So if, for example, when you're using the quick selection tool, if it's picking up things from the background and not giving you the enough control then over the shape that has been created, I can show you another way of doing that. So I am basically going to press copy, and over on to my black and white outcome here, I'm just going to paste. So there we go. We can see the lamppost has now appeared within my black and white image, and you can see down here it's sitting on a separate layer. So it's not where I want it to be. It's not the size I want it to be either, because I need to be playing around with scale a little bit. So I'm going to press Control and T. Oh, sorry, Command and T on the Mac. Control T, I think, on the PCs. I'm going to adjust maybe the angle of it, and I'm going to press down Shift whilst I expand the corners and make it larger. And the reason I'm pressing down Shift is if I didn't, it would do this, where it kind of warps a little bit and distorts. But if I press Shift, it's going to keep it all in proportion for me as I enlarge or reduce it. So I'm going to have it maybe come in about there. So I'm going to press return on the keyboard, and that should make the image sit now on my image, on top of the background image. Now I want this one to be black and white too, so I'm going to do the same thing as before. So I'm going to go to Image and Adjustments and Black and White, and you can see it's obviously turned black and white on default. I'm going to have a little play around again to see if I can make it maybe a little bit more striking. Bring some of these sliders down a little bit. There we go. I think I'm going to use that, I think. So press OK on that. And I'm also going to do the same thing again. I'm going to do the filter and the cutout. And because I used it, it's the last filter I use. It's across the top here. So I can just select it and it'll do a little shortcut filter for me on it. Lovely. Right. Now then, let's go back to his images on Safari again and have a little look. Okay. Let's see what else I've got. So I've got another sign here. And this one. I think that building might be a little bit too big. I'm going to use one of these signs, I think. I'll try this one, and I'm going to show you the other selection technique that I talked about a moment ago. So I've already shown you the quick selection here. So let's see if this does work on it. So if I go over the sign, you can see it's picking up all the pixels underneath. If I edge towards, there we go. Like if I go towards the edge of the sign, where there isn't much contrast in tone or colour, it's seeped through and it's gone into another area of the photograph. So for this selection, the quick selection tool isn't going to be accurate enough for me. So I'm going to press Command and D or Control and D on a laptop to deselect that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to use a pen tool instead. Now the pen tools are really good for being really precise in terms of creating a shape on your photograph. Okay, so I'm going to start down here. I might zoom in a little bit actually first so I can see what I'm doing a bit better. I'm going to hide that. There we go. So I'm going to start down here. You can see my pen tool there. I'm going to make a point of reference, and then it basically works in straight lines. So if I do another one here, you can very faintly, I hope, see that line running up the edge of the pole. I'm going to put another one over here, and another one up here, and here, and here, and then back towards the pole, down to the bottom, there, and then I'm going to close the loop. So you'll see the little squares have disappeared now because there is a single loop going all the way around this image. Can't see it very well on here, but if I head over here and choose Paths, and then this icon here, you can see like a little circle of dots. If I select that one, it's basically going to change that from a path now into a selection. And there we go. You can see on screen now, it's got that sort of flickery outline like I did earlier when we used the quick selection tool. I'm just going to zoom out again now. Now that technique I've just shown you with the pen tool, that was a really simple shape to use because all the edges are quite straight, and so I didn't need that many points of reference. But what the pen tool is really good for as well is for quite complex shapes where there's lots of curves and so on, and you can really sort of like, go around the, for example, if I was going to do this arrow here, you could go around this curve and get it super, super accurate going around there. Right, okay, so I've got my selection. So again, I'm going to press Command and C to copy it, or Control and C if you're on a laptop, and I'm going to do Command V or Control V on here to paste it. Now if I come back into layers, you'll see again it's on, this image itself is on a separate layer again. I'm going to do the same thing again, and I'm going to try to alter the dimensions of it. Now I think last time I showed you I did Command T on the as a shortcut. You can also do it through edit, I think. Edit and free transform down there. So you can either select free transform there, or you can do Command T or Control T on the keyboards. So again, I'm going to adjust maybe the angle of it. I'm bring it down the bottom down here. I'm going to Control Shift, Shift, and then adjust the size of it. I think it looks okay. I'm not going to make it too big actually, because this one's quite imposing, so I'm going to keep this one a bit smaller. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to press return on the keyboard. Lovely. Same thing again now. I'm going to make this black and white, like so. And now there's quite a bit of red in here, so I may darken the reds to make it a bit more high contrast. That looks quite good. I'm just going to leave it as that actually. I'm going to say okay, and then again I'm going to put a filter, a cutout filter on there, and that just sort of makes it all sort of blend together a little bit more. Right. Let's go back onto Safari. Okay, so I think the next thing now to do is maybe to add like a little bit of colour now onto this creation that we've made. So let's try some brushes on here. Now let's go to the default one for now. So you'll see in the brushes, you can either select a brush like this which has got a hard edge to it, or something like this which has got a soft edge to it, and that'll give you a big difference in terms of how you apply the colour or the paint to your canvas. This is obviously the size slider up here, and it'll alter how big or how small the paintbrush is. Now, if we look down here, you can see this this colour is currently selected, and I don't want that. I want to have a yellow or an orange or something. So I'm going to double click it, and then I can choose a particular colour that I want to work with. Let's go with a nice sort of orangey red for now. That will do. Now I just want to check. I've got a brush selected. I'll show you what the hard edge one looks like first, so you can see that. It's normal. It's 100% opacity. So if I was going to drag it across the over the top of this image, it would look a little bit like this, okay? Which isn't the kind of effect that we want really, because we want something a lot more subtle. Going by what's on Safari here, these colours are quite, they are bright, but they're patchy in places. There's not that many hard edges. So what we will do is we'll use a different kind of brush, and we'll also play around with the opacity a little bit. So I'm just going to take a step back there. Right, let's see what a soft edge brush looks like. So I'm going to show you the difference in that. So you can see that the edges here sort of just blend out a little bit more. There isn't a definite start and stop point. So that's more of what we want. But I'm going to play around with the opacity a little bit, because I don't want it to be too overwhelming. We want it to be sort of more in the background, like in Sven Pfrommer's work. And I might just bring up the scale a little bit so that we can use a bigger brush. So I'm going to just very carefully, well, not very carefully, just a bit randomly apply some colour. I'll do a little bit of orange like that. Now, if I keep applying over the top of it, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Let me get rid of the guides, clear that. If I keep applying over the top of it, obviously the density of the colour will build up, and eventually, it'll become a lot darker. So I'm going to take a step back there. Now that's enough orange for me for the time being. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select some yellow instead. That's quite a nice yellow. Let's go for that one. So I'm going to apply a little bit of yellow on here and so on. Now, because I am applying this colour over the top of the images behind are going quite faint. So let's have a check if that's the kind of effect that we want with Sven Pfrommer. So, you know, some of these images back here, these are quite faint, but this one on top is actually a lot more bold. You know, you can see the blacks a lot better on this one. So I think what I will do is I will play around with where this layer is. So I think I might bring it underneath like so, and then this is making this one sit on top now. So you can see this has jumped up to top. So this is the top layer. All the paintwork I've just created is underneath. But I'm going to go back onto this layer again now, and I'm going to add a little bit onto this layer, just so it's not too obviously separate from the rest of the image. Maybe choose a slightly different colour. We'll have a little bit of red, why not? A bit fainter though, maybe about that. And I'm going to just drop the size down a little bit, not that small, maybe about that big. And I'm just going to play around a little bit more with adding some red in maybe here and there, building up a little bit of colour around. Let's have a look again at Sven Pfrommer. And that's not looking too bad. I've got a similar colour scheme, and I've layered the images like he has on there as well. So I'm actually quite liking that. That's quite nice. Now, what I could do now to make this link even more strongly with Sven Pfrommer is I could actually play around with these different brushes on here to try to get perhaps this kind of streaky effect and this sort of paint splattery effect as well. So I'm not actually sure off the top of my head which brushes are best for that. Let's try something and find out, shall we? Let's have a look at that one. Let's increase the size of it. Let's choose a different colour so we can, sorry, cancel that a second, press the wrong button. So we can see the difference. Let me try just blue just for a minute, just so I can see what the effect is. Oh, see, there you go. Look, so on this one, if I zoom in slightly, you can see that this brush, get rid of that, this brush, you know, is looking quite, you know, very much like how you would apply paint using a paintbrush to paper. But that's not really what Sven Pfrommer has done, so I'm going to get rid of that one. Let's test out something else. What about this one here? Oh, hang on. It's a bit on the small side. Let's make it a little bit bigger so we can see the effect. Again, it's okay. You know, I think, you know, again, I could play around with the opacity. I could play around with the size. But there may be some better ones on here. I'm not going to go through them all. I should really know them all, shouldn't I, off the top of my head, but I don't. Let's have a look at this one. What does this one do? Now that one's quite nice because the edges of this one are starting to get a little bit sort of patchy, like Sven's work. So maybe if I take a step back, if I played around a little bit with the scale of it and also the opacity, and then let's choose an appropriate colour. Let's go back to our colour scheme. Let's choose a different kind of orange, and I'm going to zoom out a little so I can see the overall effect a bit more clearly. Am I all the way out? Yes, I was. Hang on, let me go back in a bit more. So I'm going to just maybe start to apply it over here, like so. And because I've changed the opacity, like you can see, it's quite a pale orange now, and it's giving me some different effects. And the more I sort of build up these layers, the more complex the overall image is going to become. And it's just going to, you know, those images are just going to show through. Now, the other thing that might be useful, like I said before about some of these areas of the photograph now sort of disappearing under all this layer of paint. Now, there could be, there's a way of you enhancing certain areas to be darker or lighter. So on here, we can see certain windows are darker than others going on behind. So let's have a little look. We can use the dodge and burn tool. So let me get this right now. The burn tool makes things darker and the dodge tool makes things lighter. So the burn tool I'm going to go onto our black and white background copy, our background layer down here, and I'm going to see if I can make these kind of areas a little bit darker to pull them through that orange a little bit more. So up here, again, you can see I can play around with the size of my brush, and I can again, decide whether or not I want a hard edge effect or a soft edge effect and so on. And I can also choose whether or not the effect is applied to shadows, midtones or highlights, and I'll show you the difference with those in a second. You can also adjust here the exposure, which basically means the strength of what you're doing. Okay, so I'll stick it on 50 for now, just so we can see. So if I hide these top layers, you might see it a bit easier to begin with. So if I go over these shadows, you can see, look how dark they're becoming now. Okay, because I'm burning on top and making these shadows super, super dark. If I change this to highlights, for example, again, if I went up here to the bright areas, again, it would make those areas very, very dark. You can see, what's happened there. I can also adjust that though, depending on how strong I want the burn effect to be. If you wanted it really strong, it's going to be, see, a very, very dark outcome and so on. So I'm just going to take a few steps back there. So I'm going to go into the mid-tones here, just drop that exposure down a bit, and I'm just going to try to strengthen some of these more mid-tones. You can see now that when I'm applying this burn tool, it's not actually affecting the white at all like it was a second ago, and that's because I've selected the mid-tones. If I had the highlights selected, it would be making the whites a lot darker. So there we go. So I'm going to just go with that for now, and let's have a look. If I put the other layers on top, let's see what's, oh yeah, you can see that building's coming through a lot stronger now. I might pull through some of these windows over on this side, so I'll keep the upper layers on so I can see my effect, and I'm just going to apply the burn tool, but you can see I'm applying it on the background copy here. This is the one that's active, so that's the one that's being affected. Let's have a look at the shadows. There we go, it's just pulling through some of those contrasts a little bit more there for me, and so on. So you can be quite selective in terms of working out, which areas of your composition you would like to be dark and which ones you would like to be fainter and so on, by using that burn and that dodge tool as well. The dodge tool will obviously do the opposite effect and make things lighter for you. So there we go. So that's our Sven Pfrommer tutorial. I hope that's useful for you. I would definitely recommend that you play around a little bit with the brushes. When you're doing the painting of the different colours, play around with what brush effects you can achieve, and also play around with the order of the layers to see what kind of effects you want in terms of which is going to be the most prominent feature, which is going to be the one in the foreground, which is going to be one in the background, and so on.